And we are live with three of my favorite people on this, what we like to call online hell site. We are going to be discussing the hottest of spiciest takes. Plus, for Into the Twitterverse, is it okay to long for Ben Affleck's The Batman? We'll be discussing that on the show. And joining me to discuss this is the one and only Nico Caruso.
Oh, don't say the one and only. That puts a lot of pressure on me.
Wait, you're not the one and only Nick Caruso. You're like Nick Caruso the third, right?
I'm the third. My family is unoriginal with the names for the men. Will I keep that with my child one day? Stay tuned. I'm not sure. So that's why I adopted Nico. So I could be a one and only. So I guess, Josh, I appreciate that intro, my friend.
Oh, yes, of course. And then we have Garrett Grev from Batman on Film. One of the most pleasant people that I know.
Yeah, I think that. Not everybody does, though, believe it or not. I feel like sometimes like I'm actually trying to be nice or something, and it like just completely reads wrong on Twitter, and I don't find out about it until later, and someone like send me a message. I'm like, oh no, really? What's going on? I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do? But I enjoy getting along most of the time. It's kind of my I'm Minnesotan, you know. Carlos is, you know, my brother to the north. I feel like our people have a very strong sort of like we like to get along and not kind of, you know, like bump into people too much. So a spicy take show is going to be it's gonna stretch me out of my comfort zone just a little bit, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, we got things like snow removal to worry about. We got to be nice to each other.
Yeah, man. It's like, how are you going to survive the winter if you're also being mean to people and you're freezing to death? That's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Come to think of it, you guys are all way up north. Like, Nico's in Chicago.
Yeah.
You're in Minnesota. And, of course, Carlos from the Nerd Room up in the Great White North in Canada. Welcome to the show, Carlos, for the first time.
Hey, man, from the home of the Calgary Flames, you got to come on the Hot Take Show. So thanks so much for having me, man. I'm, you know, ride or die with Nico and the Vigilante crew, but this is, I think, my first time ever with Garrett, crossing paths on an actual show. And and we've hung once or twice, Josh, but never in this intimate a setting. So thanks so much for the invite, man. I was truly honored.
Of course, I'm glad you're here. You have the best chin on Twitter, by the way.
Oh, it's immaculate.
Yeah,
you know, I'm just keep being grateful that Robert Pattinson doesn't have any social media, because I might have to give up the title to him. But for now, I'm safe.
For now, it's still you, brother.
All right. Well, for the first segment into the Twitterverse, I was going to skip this, but I came across a very, very hot take on Twitter, and I felt like we had to discuss it. And it's from DC Insider Films gal, who seems to be a legitimate insider.
Oh, yeah.
That being said, I know that for a couple of you, she's crossed paths with you, and has needless to say, we'll call it a W for Nico. We will call it a W for Nico, the interaction. So let's throw up this tweet. This is a portion of the tweet. If you want to go and see the full tweet, you can see it at DC Films Insider Gal, but StreamYard only gives us 200 characters. So here's the tweet. I think the Affleck Batman film would have been the best way to go right now. I like the Reeves film, but people love the shared universe. It's doing well, but it's another reboot. This is a very spicy take. And I know that we probably have a variety of different opinions about this on the show. So I'm going to throw it first, even though both of you are first timers. This is hard, but I'm going to throw it to Garrett, because Garrett stems from the most pro everything must be siloed website in fandom, I think. So Garrett, let's break down this tweet. What do you think about it? What do you think of this take?
You know, I wasn't incredibly surprised when I saw the tweet, and I've interacted with that account a bit. I don't have any I get the impression that they are someone who actually works at Warner Brothers, is actually involved with DC. I don't have a ton of inside information, and even if I did, it probably would have been shared in confidence. But I was surprised to see the tweet put out there. I wasn't necessarily surprised by the take. So DC Insider Film Gal, whoever she really is, had, sort of put out some stuff out there in advance of the movie being released, that this was going to be, potentially a polarizing film. Batman fans are going to be, potentially some Batman fans are going to be shaken up by it. And I was actually braced going into the movie to be challenged a lot more by it than I actually was in the end. Especially the way things kind of wrapped up at the end. So I'd kind of gotten the sense that, whoever DC Film Gal is, was sort of like, yeah, this wouldn't have been my first choice, or it doesn't really scratch her particular bat itch, so to speak. But the kind of getting back to the question of, connected with Ben Affleck versus going standalone, with Reeves and Pattinson doing their own thing. Yeah, man, I really wanted to see that Affleck movie. Really, really wanted to see that Affleck. I've been a huge Ben Affleck fan, since Good Will Hunting. I was trying to think, what else? I love Armageddon. Just one of my all-time favorite
Armageddon
popcorn
too.
movies. It's just it's hard to hate on Affleck, even when he has some stinkers. Man, when's the last time you watched what is it? Christmas, that horrible Christmas movie he did where he rents the family. He's even pretty charming in those early 2000 stinkers that he put out. I like Daredevil. So I was sort of, maybe that could have been a hot take of its own. I like
Yeah,
Daredevil.
I was gonna say, brother, put that back in the can.
Yeah, right. So I was hanging on, probably past the time it was time to let it go, that Affleck was going to be done. Even when it was obvious, hey, he's saying he's having a hard time cracking the code on the script. And he's like, hey, I'm going to step back from directing. And then he was like, I'll still play Batman for Matt Reeves. I was still hanging on to hope all through that, even though the writing was pretty much on the wall.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that would have been the right road to follow, to somehow have Affleck want to keep playing the character, because no one is disputing the fact that this was Ben's job to quit. Right. He chose to walk away from the director chair, and maybe you can say, yeah, but he didn't choose to walk away from starring it. But everybody that knew what was going on knew this was going to be an actor director, like a Ben Affleck Batman movie. And once you step out of that director chair, it's pretty hard to bring in somebody other than like a Mick G or one of the directors for hire that used to make superhero movies 15 years ago.
Yeah,
that isn't going to want their
they're all
own
working
star
for Marvel
with their own
now,
approach.
man.
Yeah, right. Seriously. But it's going to be hard once you're done directing it to think I'm a shoo-in to still play this part, even though I'm going to give the story duties and the direction to somebody else. So it's hard for me to say that would have been better. I don't know if it would have made any more money, to be honest. I loved the Batman. I'm really happy we got it. So maybe you can always look and hope that hindsight's 20/20. But for me, I feel like we kind of landed in the right spot to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm actually in violent agreement with you, Garrett.
Oh, I love that. It makes me feel good already.
I 100% agree. I think I'm on the opposite side of her. I agree with her, but I'm kind of on the opposite side of her. I'm so glad we got the Batman, because the Batman is a Batman film through and through, right? It is really good, really solid. It is so faithful to the character, and something that I do not think, if the situation had happened 6 months earlier or 6 months after, I don't think we would have gotten the Batman. I think they would have recast and they would have done something within the DCEU. So I think that we're extremely lucky that we got the Batman. And I'm really pleased with it. The one area of disagreement that I would have with you is I think that if Ben Affleck made, and it doesn't sound like this is the movie that he was making, but if Ben Affleck had made a very super heroic, sort of like Batman the superhero, right? Versus Batman the detective. And it was really, really good. I think that it could have probably cracked $1 billion. And not because he was beloved in Batman versus Superman and Justice League, but just because he was known in the role. I think there would have been a lot of curiosity around him doing the solo movie. The fact that he was directing it and has been acclaimed as a director. And I think his sensibility, Ben Affleck just has very popular sensibilities. You know, Argo is such a crowd pleaser like film. It's so, whereas Matt Reeves, I think, has to kind of like will himself to be a crowd pleaser a little bit. He's very like he likes to get granular with things. So that's my take. Carlos, I'm gonna hand it to you. What do you think of this tweet?
I am also in violent agreement with Garrett on this. Like, as far as everything he said about coming into a Ben Affleck led Batman project and the pre-existing fandom and the hope that what he was doing with the character under Zack Snyder continued in a tweaked sense, I was totally there shoulder to shoulder with you. Like, I kind of liked that we had finally got a bit of a superhero-y Batman, and that, you know, he could be the guy with these gadgets that don't necessarily have to be plausible in real life and all that kind of stuff. That said, the big flag that I wave all the time on the Nerd Room is character over continuity. So in that regard, I don't give a hoot about this girl's take on people loving shared universes, and that's the way to go, because you have to give people shared universes. Like, that's garbage to me. Like, it's all about telling a good, compelling story and a movie that'll last forever, because we're already seeing it where there's projects within continuities that people are just watching so that they consume this chapter so that they know what's going on in the movie that they actually are interested in seeing. And we're already seeing movies that after 6 months, people forget that they even came out. So I don't think that's the way. If film is art, that is not where you want to be with it. You want something that's going to be enduring, that's beloved, that's discovered time and time again. And it's like, the proof in the pudding for me that this was the way to go. And, shared universe be damned, regardless of who's playing Batman, is I look at like my podcasting brother, Tim, like he loves the Batman. And we have talked about the Batman more than we have any MCU project in the last 2 years. Like, and he is the MCU guy. And I look at my daughter and her friends, and these kids have gone to the movie multiple times, and they're like sending me messages in the middle of my workday trying to figure out the riddles on El Rata Alada to unlock stuff. Awesome. And like she's got a transgender kid that she hangs out with all the time, and he goes into the movie as Batman and comes out as Catwoman, and they do this thing on TikTok together. Like, that is the crowd that I'm so happy has discovered this movie. And it's a group of kids that has never seen this thing, like experienced Batman before. Like, they didn't go through 89 with us. They were way too young for the Dark Knight trilogy. And so that they've brought this character to them in such a special way, and that it stood out so much, like in a sea of superhero movies, that it's so special. Yeah. I could care less if Affleck was going to give us 5 movies in a continuity. If you can give us one Matt Reeves movie that's this special and that's going to be this enduring, that's, if film is art, that is the way to go.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Carlos, I found an article I wrote on Revenge of the Fans maybe back in the day, but it was basically making the case that, if DC wants a shared universe, they don't have to approach it like the MCU. They can approach it more like the X-Men universe from Fox. Like the
wonky too.
Continuity, schmontinuity. Like, just tell great stories. They can technically exist in the same universe. If directors want to bring in different characters from different franchises, that's fine. But like this idea that you have to tell a consistent story, Marvel is doing it well. But like you said, some of those films are forgettable. Even some of the great films.
Josh, and that's, I think, Carlos, kind of one thing you said, man. like it really clicked with me. And I think that a lot of times studios can learn the wrong lessons. I talk about this a lot. It's one of the, I feel like it was a catchphrase for me for a while on the BOF podcast, but studios are apt to learn the wrong lessons. And I feel like with the success of the MCU, the wrong lesson has been we have to have an interconnected universe, right? Like Universal tried to do it with the Monsterverse or whatever they were going to call it at the time. In these things, when you're not thinking about telling a good story really well, and the emphasis is on world building and creating a shared universe because the dollar signs are in the executive eyes, like it falls flat. Now, if you can tell a good story that connects with people and makes people want to show up and they get some joy or, you know, excitement or thrill out of the thing you're showing them, they're going to come back for more, whether that's connected or not. I think too often studios just said, oh yeah, that thing's working over there. Do the interconnected thing. And they jumped over the tell a really damn good story thing.
Exactly.
And most of the time, MCU films are telling a really damn good story.
Yeah, that's right. It actually, like, the way that you connect it doesn't really matter. What matters is telling a great story. So that's really important. Well, moving on. Just kidding. I like to torture Nico. Nico, what do you think about this?
Listen, I wish I could say something different, but I'm going to. Instead of violently, I'm going to brutally agree with.
Wow, that's great.
Nice.
And coming
Very
from
original.
someone, as you know, who I love, Ben Affleck. He's still my favorite, I think, portrayal of the character overall. Especially when you look at visually the physicality of him. But to kind of take the conversation in a little bit of a different way, assuming that this tweet exists in real time, like the Affleck Batman movie would have come out closer to Justice League, and I think that would have been, I don't think it would have been received well. I love Ben Affleck behind the camera. I mean, The Town, Argo, he's fantastic. Then you got a movie like Live by Night, which was pretty tough. Just with where he was at, I don't think he would have made the movie. I don't think he would have made a movie with the same level of quality that Matt Reeves has, and with the same amount of talent, both in front of and behind the camera, that Reeves had. And I don't know if at the time the bad taste of the DC films, I think this movie also benefits from being a few years more removed from that. And you got a guy like Robert Pattinson coming back. It's kind of his comeback in a way to the mainstream, which is cool. And there's just more time. And I do think there's characters who could get away with a reboot every few years. And I think it's Batman and Spider-Man. And I think they've now proven that multiple times each. Maybe not the way the Garfield ones ended up, but with what Holland did and what Reeves is doing right now, I think they proved it. So I don't think he would have made a movie on the level of the Batman, and I don't know if it would be doing as well. I don't know. It's hard to say for sure. So for the tweet to say I think it would have been the best way to go, I don't know if I agree with. I don't know if I could agree with that. The only thing I'm going to give a little bit of pushback on is I do think people love shared universes, and I agree with Garrett. I do think a lot of studios are trying to do this. Like there's going to be 5 Game of Thrones shows that all connect. They're doing a Power Rangers thing. Clearly the DCEU tried to catch up and that didn't work, but that's a different conversation. But I will say this. I do think the MCU has, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, it has conditioned the audience a bit, because I would argue, like I just said, Batman and Spider-Man are characters that I think could get away with it. But you have a Sony movie right now that's being pretty heavily torched for where it takes place and the implications of certain scenes, because it's not fitting the continuity. And is that massively impacting the movie? I don't know, because the movie's getting absolutely crucified. So, so it's hard to say it's not. I do think I'm with you guys. I'm story over everything, but I do think if you gave the audience a choice, like if we polled the GA for the ones who are in the know and the ones who aren't in the know, I bet a lot of them would tell you they would love to see Robert Pattinson with with Jason. Those are the only 2 I could say right now, because those are the only
Who knows, right? Yeah.
I caught myself with the lightning bolt guy for a sec. But I do think that, but at the same time, I think the beauty of what Reeves' Batman is going to do is actually is going to boost the appreciation for both Keaton and Affleck when we see them in The Flash, because I haven't seen Batman this popular on social media yet. Like it's everywhere. It's very cool. And like, to bring it full circle, I don't know. And I love the guy, but I don't know if Affleck could have put something on this scale. I don't know.
It's quite brilliant what Warner Brothers is doing, because I actually don't think that I think that Batman being separate from like shared universe works better for the solo films. But I don't think a DC shared universe actually works without Batman.
I agree with you.
We'll find out, right? Like,
yeah,
kind of. We'll kind of find out.
Well, yeah, but what they're doing is brilliant because they're bringing Keaton back. So even if he isn't like, and it sounds like Keaton's going to be in the bat suit. It sounds like he's going to be Batman.
Yeah, he's going to be Batman.
So it's actually quite brilliant what they've done. Is they're giving us this new take in the solo films, but they're bringing back this legacy version of the character. And I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, a little ways down the road we get a HBO Max announcement for Michael Keaton potentially doing something. I would love to see him reunite with Tim Burton and do like a finale to his Batman. Cool. That would be really awesome. That'd be really cool. But that's a hot take for another day. We need to move on.
Josh, one thought real quick, you know.
Sure.
I'll wrap this up. But Nico had something that, you know, he's talking about. I think you're bringing up Affleck and kind of where he was in his headspace, and was he really in a position to deliver the goods? And I think, you know, whether it was what the studio wanted him to do, or like kind of the stress he was putting on himself as a Batman fan, I always thought, you know, at the time and then looking back, like Affleck talked about how he kind of wanted to make the quintessential Batman movie. Like it's all there, right? It's like all the villains are there, all the scenes or all the locations you'd ever want in a Batman movie as a Batman fan's there. Like, we're going to go through Arkham, we're going to hit it all. And I just kind of feel like, one, sounds awesome. Like animated movies try to do that. Like, that sounds like it would be very big, would be very fun, very aspirational. But the other side of me thinks like, man, I'm really glad we didn't like have the pressure of the Batman trying to be the Batman.
Yeah,
because the Batman is really swinging for the fences, right? Affleck's the Batman was like, I'm hitting a home run here, and ended up striking out, right? Like, to expand the sports metaphor. But what that allowed is, in the vacuum, Matt Reeves got to actually make, in a lot of ways, a more quiet and introspective Batman movie than we've gotten before, that focused on character and putting the character in a different spot than we've seen on film, which attracted, you know, to your point around Pattinson making his return to the mainstream. Like, we know he's a fan. He's talked about how big a fan he was, but to play that character and almost like a little bit more aligned with this like indie art house approach that really kind of lines up well with where he's been sharpening his teeth for the last decade. And I'm glad we got that, because even with what Nolan did, this is not a Nolan copy. Anybody who says that, I kind of immediately roll my eyes. We weren't going to get this type of look into the character with this unique approach out of that Affleck movie. We could have gotten big, like blow you away popcorn Batman movie, but we weren't going to get this Batman movie. And I love the Batman movie.
Yeah. Me could not agree more. And Lauren, Lauren is online. She says we should make "I'm in violent agreement" shirts. Yes, I think that's something that we should do. So that will be those will be in the works. Great discussion around that. Let's get into the main event of the show, where we're going to be talking about the hottest of hot. Oh man, people are not ready for how spicy these takes are going to be. I'm so excited for it. So we're going to start with Nico Caruso, because I know he is the king of hot takes. Nico, let's share your first hot take. Let's go.
How fitting is it though? Like, I'm so excited for how the rest of this is going to play out, because how fitting is it for a hot take show? Like, we've had 20 minutes of us just beautifully agreeing with each other before that might go away. All right. should I swing for the fences first or should I go calm first?
No,
Swing for the fences,
swing
man.
for the fences.
So these are also, let me put my disclaimer out there. These are also personal hot takes. I am not wording this as being objective. This is just a hot take I have. So I'm not a big Superman guy. I'm not. He is, I don't dislike him. I like the character a lot. I mean, I grew up with like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited are like the gold standard for everything DC for me. And I grew up on those. And I've only seen Superman 78, but I really appreciate that movie. I love Reeve. I like Man of Steel. I do like the character. I haven't read a lot of him and I'm not dying to be Superman. Like I'm not a Superman guy. Okay, so here's my hot take. My hot take is that when I think of Superman and what he is and his abilities, what the Nolans and Snyder ultimately try to do with him, I think is the most interesting thing that has been done with Superman for me as a person. And I'm going to tell you why. He is so unbelievably powerful. And take the quality of the movies aside, just conceptually. He is so unbelievably powerful. He can stop every single thing. And I know the argument is the Clark Kent side is, okay, well, he holds himself back, et cetera, et cetera. But I can argue the line in that movie, if he's all powerful, he can't be all good. And what that is essentially trying to say is he can't solve every single problem. That's just not how it works. I try to watch a show like Superman and Lois where they show him can be anywhere in the world at once. And then there's these other things where he's getting his ass beat, right? And then I look at the destruction in Man of Steel and I go, well, that's really over the top. But at the same time, guys, and you're seeing this, we literally saw this with COVID, and we're seeing this with a slap at the Academy Awards. I love the realism when these characters are brought into realism. It's why I love the Nolan trilogy so much. And it's why I love certain pieces of the Matt Reeves film so much. If Superman was on this earth today, the same kind of conversations and events would have happened. And people might not like it, but the news segment sequence in BVS, where they're all talking about what Superman means and what he should do and what he should be, is not only a scary, timely look at how our culture would react to something like that, it's very interesting to me. And it was more interesting to see Superman try to figure out who he is here than just show up, put on the cape, and he's an altruistic hero, and every single person on the earth just accept that this God is here and just automatically assumes he's going to save us, because what if he can't be there? And that is the fundamental question. It was so interesting to me, not the quality of the movies, that's aside, the concept of putting him here as this superpowered alien, and he and the world had to figure out a way to find harmony together, was utterly interesting to me. And as someone who's not big on Superman, I saw that and went, ooh, this would make me a Superman guy. Now let me go refill my whiskey.
Yeah, no, to be honest, like I agree with a lot of that, and like how elegantly they conceive those portions of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
However, it just got lost in the sauce with all the nonsense that Snyder baked around it. Like,
sure, yeah,
you try and do that story, but you don't show that. Instead of building that out and building out Clark's struggles and showcasing him struggling with this, we get 20 minutes of Batman blowing the crap out of people because that's what we wanted to see.
Because it's cool.
Yeah. So if he had reined in the Zack attack of it all, and then you build all that, and then you get to this climax where you pose this question to the character as to what are you gonna do? Are you going to kill this other hero that I've set you up against, or are you going to go try and save your mother type of thing? And his immediate reaction is to be like, yeah, I'll save Lois, and screw it, I'm going to go kill this guy. Like, what? It was just so, like, I get what you're saying, but the rest of the movie was so horribly made around it that they didn't meet the law. It wasn't even lofty. They didn't meet the target that they set for themselves. And so that's why it doesn't work, right? And so now you're in a position where you have to take it back to basics now. And yeah, like I'm all in for Sasha Kaye, but she should have never been put in that position where she has to compensate for Zack Snyder fumbling at the 1 yard line.
No, absolutely. And like I said too, it was like the actual film aside, like take all that aside, just conceptually, just the idea of that. I will not argue that the execution of what he tried to do, especially in the latter third of that film, got away from that. But from what they lay with a lot of what Jonathan Kent's talking about in Man of Steel, that a lot of it we do see kind of mirrored in portions of BVS. Take the movie out, just the actual idea of, okay, here's what we're going to do with Superman, I think is interesting. But I firmly agree it did not work, and that's why we are where we are. So I'm the anomaly of the GA who loved what he kind of went for. And you're right, it's a shame because we got to start over with him, and he didn't get the treatment that the guy with the ears got, where it was, no, let's put him right back out there. Right.
Yeah, man. Like I'm like with you, but it's a shame that they didn't, like, I think you could have got there. I think you could have had like a really special movie if you had stepped back from the Zack attack of it all and actually told a good, once again, character driven story and worry about
a little more nuance.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's what Affleck's Batman movie would have been. It would have been these amazing, mind blowing set pieces with this kind of cobbled together tissue to get something into theaters type of thing. So,
oh yeah.
Nico, I'm so glad that you brought this up as your hot take. I don't know if you and I were like communicating telepathically, but I'm like, either I'm going to start talking Superman tonight at some point. Excuse me. Cool. It's just kind of been in the ether. Or somebody else is. And there's a couple things I want to talk about. So first of all, I totally respect where you're coming from, man. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm a Superman fan and I'm going to talk down to you because I know about Superman. Because one, that's like the nerdiest thing you can do. Yeah, I have like some level of nerdy that I try to avoid. And I'll give you this. I think it's an interesting concept. I think it's an interesting concept to play with because it essentially flies in the face of what Superman is. Right. Yeah. Like, so if you're not a Superman guy, the character's never really clicked for you. It's not somebody you've been passionate about or like followed for a long time. Finding a way to make Superman more like two characters I know you're into in Spider-Man and Batman feels like a way to get a fan like you to care more about Superman. The problem is that's not Superman.
Sure.
And you could have Zack Snyder direct a movie about a super-powered alien that comes from a planet Schmepton and lands on Earth roughly around the same time period. And it's cynical, and he grows up, you know, with a cynical father and confused about what to do. And he's torn with, do I become a hero or not? Or what do I owe to this world? And his mom's like, you don't owe them anything. And he's sad, but he still does heroic things, but it doesn't make him happy. And then he decides to kill somebody, but then he changes his mind. Like, that could be a super interesting story about that super powered person, but that's not Superman. And I think the problem is, one, it's not Superman to like somebody that's been a Superman fan their entire life. It's also not Superman to the general audience, right? The general audience that, for right or wrong, and I know a lot of the big Snyder diehards get so mad when people bring up Christopher Reeve, but Christopher Reeve, Super Friends, the Kenner Superpower line, it didn't burn down the house, and it was kind of a continuation of Reeve anyway, but Superman Returns, that sort of, and I've got my own issues with Superman Returns. I shouldn't have brought that up because I'll get on a tangent. But like, that's what Superman is. And the reason why that's what Superman is because that's what he was written to be. And if anybody hasn't read this book, it's Superman, the unauthorized biography by Glenn Weldon. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to read just a quick passage.
Yes, of course.
Shoot, you did homework, man.
Dude, he brought a book. I'm mad.
I just read this book because I'm that nerdy. Okay, so Superman is bigger than the comics that birthed him, bigger even than the films and television series that have infused him throughout our culture. He will endure in some form or another for another 75 years because, unlike Spider-Man and Batman, he is not the hero with whom we identify. He is the hero in whom we believe. He is the first, the purest, the ideal. As long as character traits such as selflessness and perseverance manage to retain any cultural currency whatsoever, we will need a Superman to show us what they look like. And that is why I can't, like, that's what that's like in my heart, in my very soul. Like, that story you described is incredibly interesting. I don't want it anywhere near Superman, because I can get Batman from Batman. Shoot, I can go watch 1997 Spawn if I want to watch Spawn. I can watch a bunch of X-Men movies. But where we are today as a culture, as divisive and crappy as things can get, I would sure like to watch on the big screen a Superman who isn't riddled with self-doubt because he doesn't know who he is or what he stands for or what his moral code is. I'd like to watch a Superman that was raised in a nice small town with a couple loving parents that instilled good values and morality, and he feels compelled to help because he can, and that means he needs to from a personal standpoint. Now, if you want to throw him in a hot spot and he doesn't know quite what to do because it's a challenge unlike he's ever faced before, or if you want to make the world around him really crappy and cynical and he has to find a way to maneuver through that, that's a-okay. But once you start breaking down who Superman is and what fuels him, it gets really scary, because then we're dependent on the emotional well-being and feelings at the time of a super-powered force unlike anything in nature, and it doesn't reflect the goodness of who he is that makes us feel like we can look to him as a hero. We should be terrified of that character, because at some point he could just decide, oh no, I'd rather save my mom, so I'm gonna kill this other hero or take down a city or anything else. So I love Superman. Thanks.
Well said.
Yeah, Nico, you're wrong. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, I think that you very eloquently explained your position, and that was the most eloquent description of Zack Snyder's take on Superman I've ever heard.
Oh.
And so I commend you for that, my friend. That was
Zactivated.
Really but I have to agree with everything that Garrett just said. To me, I recently did a show with Mario Francisco Robles, where I talked of Superman on film, where we talked about putting respect on Superman's name. And I said that I think that the writers of Ted Lasso should make a Superman movie.
Yeah.
And because the Superman sensibility is there. Like, Ted Lasso is a character that people want to believe in because he's good-natured. He's got a good heart. He wants to do the right thing. It doesn't mean he doesn't face hardship or struggles. Like, those things come up. But at the end of the day, he's a good person. And so I think that's what you should do with a Superman movie. So I would love to see them hire the team that did Ted Lasso. They also did Scrubs. But hey, the Russo brothers came from sitcoms. And so I think that there's a lot of potential there. Action scenes are second unit. So if you can get those core character moments dialed in and down and a lot of fun, I think it would do a lot of good. But commendations to you, Nico, for your very eloquent explanation of why you love.
I learned from the best on the screen. That's why
the conception of Zack's Superman. So
I will say this though, Nico, you totally, when it comes now, I got to think about what I want my first hot take to be, because my hot take was, I don't ever want to see another Superman movie where he struggles with who he is or what he believes in, or if he should be a hero. Like, that was going to be my hot take. And now we just knocked both of ours out in the first one.
Knocked him out. Oh, no.
Awesome. Well, Carl, let's go up to Canada and see what the Canadians are thinking these days. Carlos, what is your hot take?
Well, because you want what Canadians are thinking.
No, I'm
That's
just
a lot of
kidding.
responsibility, Carlos.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull a bit of a thread from a fellow Canadian in one of my co-hosts, my man Troy, and we've discussed this at length, and have had others in our show walk away from us because they didn't like the conversation. But my hot take is that Marvel should scorched earth, nuke and reboot the 616 universe, New 52 style, and start from scratch. It is this confusing, convoluted mess at this point in time. And over the course of Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run, I really, really embrace this idea, because why are you trying to tell stories that continue concepts that were laid down in books you read in the 60s and 70s as a kid in 2021? It just goes to show that you're just kneading the same piece of dough over and over and over again, and you are creatively handcuffed and can't go anywhere. Scorched earth. Start it from the beginning. Keep what works. Build those concepts out. Do cool stuff. Do every single character. Don't make that mistake that DC did with trying to hold on to Batman's continuity a bit. And
Oh gosh, yeah.
like just do everybody. And there's honestly, I can't think of a single character outside of Miles Morales that I would be concerned about, not being able to appear right away. But just tweak the origin. Just have two of them get spider powers, and maybe Miles lives in Chicago, or maybe Peter lives in Chicago, and just be done with it, right? All these kids go on a field trip to Toronto, and they all go back home, and these two get spider powers.
What if
have them be different ages? Like have
Exactly.
Peter be a college student even, and then Miles is the young, junior high kid or something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's 100 different things you could do, but yeah, it's an inaccessible mess, and that is why
I am in violent agreement with this.
I'm violent agreement as well, man.
I've got to tell you, I have the Marvel Unlimited app, and I can't tell you how many times I've tried getting into Marvel Comics, and it's so hard because the continuity feels like a wall. And I feel like I'm reading through things and I'm like, wait, who is this character? Like, what are they? Like, what's their thing? And then it's like, I look it up on Wikipedia and it's like, go back 100 issues. And then it's like, I do have to say, there are great, like, individual story arcs of Marvel that I've really enjoyed.
Oh, sure.
I recently read Thor, where Thor is the Herald of Galactus. That was
in the Donny Cates run.
Yeah, that was so cool. Yeah, that was so cool. Iron Man Extremis is super good. From years ago.
I read that, but I hear that's really good. Yeah.
Like there are lots of great stories within the Marvel universe, but the continuity is a bit of a wall, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like it's. I talked to the owner of my shop a lot, and he is a deep cut, dyed in the wool. Actually, he's been on our show before. We did an episode with Jay from Words and Pictures, and great podcaster, runs a show called Invasion of the Remake, where they talk about existing movies and their remakes in the modern times, kind of thing. But we discuss all the time, people coming into the store excited because they've seen a movie or just need some more of these characters, and they leave empty-handed and completely frustrated because they can't find the characters that they're seeing on the screen, or find a clean jumping on point, or get into reading something without doing a pile of homework and then having a ton of obligations after the fact, right? Like, I just went and picked up my books, and like the Daredevil books for Dark Reign and a whole bunch of spin-offs and other things that I don't want to buy, but I have to buy to be able to read the story. It's like $50.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm a new reader, I'm like, no, you know what? I'm just going to go buy Elden Ring and be done with it, type of thing. So yeah, I think it's lost in the sauce. And honestly, New 52 was a pretty resounding success for DC. I think Marvel could crush it and find themselves these new readers that are pretty elusive. Like, there's a reason indie books are as popular as they are. It's
Yes.
because people can jump in, understand them, and off we go.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, DC books, maybe it's because I read DC books. So I don't know if it's the case because I read them or not, but the continuity doesn't seem like as big of a hurdle for those books. They seem, the way that they write, they seem to focus more on the story at hand than the continuity.
Yeah, they'll kind of
Yeah.
cheat origins in a few little things, but yeah, there always seem to be cleaner starts and finishes. Sorry,
Well,
Garrett, I didn't mean to cut you
DC,
off.
sorry, no, this is your thing, man. I'm just so anxious to talk about it. I can't help myself. DC's got the experience in doing this, though, right? Like DC has done this time and time again, where it said like, "Oh man, we are really hamstrung, and our writers don't have the ability to tell great stories the way that they want to tell great stories because continuity is so messed up." And we've made so many editorial mistakes, and we got to reboot this thing, right? They've been doing it since '86, you know, and arguably before when they just didn't care and everything was on a separate earth anyway, which ended up causing a lot of the problems because then the writing staff gets confused about like, okay, is this that version of this character or a different version of the character? And for me, I totally agree, violently agree, staying on brand here, sell some t-shirts, because like I'm a really big X-Men fan. Not a lot of people know that, probably because I don't tweet about it as much, and I have, you know, Batman podcast, but I'm a huge X-Men fan. Love X-Men. And it was a huge 90s X-Men reader. I've got a really pretty big, you know, run of Uncanny X-Men. And I just like kind of had to quit. I didn't have the time for it. I couldn't figure it out. The stuff wasn't making sense. It was, you know, connected, but this, you know, this was this baby that we said was Nate Summers isn't Nate Summers. That was in the future. He became Cable, but then actually was Strife, but not really Strife. And that's when it was still easier to understand. If you go into an X-Men book now and try to understand things like, whoa, man, good luck. Good luck. And it's so intimidating. Like I went back and I bought the Battle for the Atom kind of storyline run. It's probably been longer ago than I realized. It was maybe like 5-6 years. And trying to get back into that was such a chore. And I thought, hey, this is my chance to get back into X-Men books. And I even listened to this podcast, Jay and Miles explain the X-Men, and you know, they had kind of moved along throughout the years. And then it was like it got really wonky, and they had to not do chronology in the same way and jump around continuity. And I started, you know, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can find an episode that's going to explain what's going on here or why this character is so goofy. And essentially I just had to give up, and I didn't buy any more books after that. And I thought it was going to be my chance to get back into it. Same kind of thing happened with Spider-Man a couple times. Superior Spider-Man, I'm like, all right, well, this sounds crazy. Let's hop back on board. And I find myself continuing to go back to trades of more contained storylines that I can enjoy sort of, you know, on its own, because at least within that trade, it kind of makes sense.
Sure.
I've lost now both of my hot takes. My second hot take that I had prepared is I think we're almost to the point where we have evolved past monthly or bi-weekly comic books because we are so constrained by storytelling and by what fans have done to the writers and to the industry with some of the demands. And we get to this point where now to sell books, you have to do these wild, goofy things in some cases to drive speculation buys. And then you can kind of coast and write a storyline for a few more issues, and you look at your average year sales and your jobs are safe. But that ultimately impacts the ability for the next writer to tell a good story. So I would love personally, instead of going as far as I said, like, hey, we maybe evolved past monthlies, to say like, do a total reboot and take it all the way down to the studs. You know, don't as much as I love Scott Snyder, Batman, New 52 Batman, the you know, Batman flagship run. It was a little bit weird that we had to think about, he had all these Robins and broke his back in the same amount of time that Superman's been on the job for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, start it all over. And if you can do a cool way to segue out of the old 616, like have a Marvel Flashpoint that leads into why this is a totally new thing, but then stay committed to that it's a new thing and introduce these storylines. I think it's going to be the best for everyone, because if we continue to have comic books be predominantly bought by dudes in their 30s and 40s, this industry is going to be dead.
Yeah.
It's going to be dead. We need to find a way to make things accessible for new readers and to give them, a chance to continue to buy comic books for the next 20 or 30 years of their life and pass it on to their kids in an acceptable way. So it's kind of this Phoenix returning from the ashes, X-Men, there you go. I was thinking Harry Potter with that, but whatever.
Hey, they both work.
It's incredibly, I think it's really necessary at this point, Carlos. I think it's a wonderful point.
Here's a sub hot take. DC and Marvel should give free DC Universe Infinite and Marvel Unlimited accounts to high school students.
Oh man,
and provide comic books to schools.
Yeah.
And
Reading's
put comic books in schools. Yeah, because it'll help kids to read too. So that's really good. Garrett, it is your turn, my friends.
Please.
Oh wait, Nico, did you have anything to say
Listen,
about that?
I violently agree. The only thing I'll say is to hop on a Marvel book is so hard, in that you also have these writers like just to give like a quick example, the Rom Ewing and Donny Cates Venom Hulk switch should have worked, but because they're trying to follow each other's continuities, it is Donny Cates, excellent writer, is not going to follow what they did with Immortal Hulk. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't keep going. I don't know why a Spider-Man run, the big climax of the ending of that run, is calling back to Sin's Past, a story most people hate anyway. It's not even
not
cool.
good.
It's not even a cool pull. Like, oh my God, they went back to Sin's Past. No, we all hate this. So why are you going back to something we hate? Yes. Either let some of these characters finally progress, like in main continuity, finally let Peter and MJ have a kid, like in main continuity, and let's do that. Or start over, or do like a Black Label thing where you could have all these other writers do these little more self-contained stories, like Garrett said, to where these readers and these people can hop on and see either what they're seeing on the shows and the films, or just a way to hop on and get to know the character. Because if you're hopping on Spider-Man right now, you're not going to get a sense of who Peter Parker or Spider-Man is. That's just my humble opinion. So I violently agree, and I violently want to burn the 616. So let's just move on.
Light it up.
Yeah, on the DC side, they should let Bruce and Selena be married in main continuity.
I agree with you. That's a different topic.
We've never seen that before. It'd be really interesting. It'd give storytellers ways to, and I don't think that readers would be put off by that, or would be like new readers wouldn't be thrown off by that. Like, they know Catwoman and Batman are a thing. So I think that would be good too. Also, another sub hot take of this hot take. Carlos, so much discussion out of this point. They should make kids comics. Agree?
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Amen.
Like-
Absolutely.
Like,
Yes.
I became a fan as a kid, and I think it's really important that we, and get to Garrett's point, if kids are on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're not on Instagram anymore. They're on TikTok, and funny enough, I hear a lot of high school students are on Twitter, which is interesting, because I thought that was an older platform.
Getting younger and younger.
Yeah, but like, you need to make this stuff for kids, for younger
Yep.
kids as well.
And if you're
So,
doing that, you need to make it cheap so that they can get their hands on it.
yeah,
It doesn't need to be a $4, or like a $6.95 book now. Like, like Little Gotham was great when that was coming out,
Yeah.
back when I was a kid, and you'd have, Batman Adventures or Superman
Mhm.
Adventures coming out like $1.25, maybe $1.50 later in the run. Man, I was going to the comic book shop every single Tuesday, even though they came out on Wednesday, because the lady at the local bookstore liked me and she gave
Had
me
them
my books
early.
a night early.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
great.
And last thing, with the paper they're putting these Marvel books on, I don't know why I'm still paying that much, because I'm turning pages of these Venom books and I think the cover is going to rip right off. It's so fragile.
And good on you for still turning the pages on those Venom books, because man,
Floppies, man.
I
can't
my
physical till I die.
like my go-to books were Venom and Immortal Hulk every single month. Ewing
Oh,
and
yeah.
Cates. I cannot read either of those books. I made
I'm
it
about
through
to drop
5
them.
issues
They're
of Venom.
it's so bad. I'm about to drop it.
Oh, yeah.
It's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, okay, we could go on a whole nother tangent with that too, because like people are paying $14.99 for HBO Max, right? And that gives them access to a bunch of DC animated series, animated shows, animated movies, live action shows, live action movies, et cetera, et cetera. And you're charging $3.99 or $4.99 in some cases for one comic book. Like the
Wow.
pricing is like so like it has not evolved with the times, you know? And it's like it's just I get it. So I almost think it would be better if for the monthly formats, if they went really like kept the prices the same but went premium on the print and made and did less printing and made it a collector's kind of a thing. And then do like really push the apps, really push the digital comics, and then release trade paperbacks later because that's where they make most of their money. So yeah, great conversation around the printed comic, which doesn't happen a lot around here. Garrett, my friend,
He's on his third take already.
you're on your third take already. We're only going to get to one each, so it's
it's-
fine.
It's a deep cut.
Okay.
We might not have as much agreement on this one. And before anybody rushes to cancel me, this is hot for the intention of being hot, right?
Oh, I know where he's going to.
I don't know if you do. I might shock you. I don't even know that I believe this, but I think an argument could be made for Warner Brothers to
Do it.
Take a sip, man, and let
Take
us
a
have it.
sip. Do some jumping jacks. We got
Lauren wants you
Lauren,
to
bring it.
Lauren wants you to bring it, Garrett.
Bring it.
Warner Brothers needs to cool their jets on the whole Ezra Miller situation and see how things play out before they do anything drastic around recasting or superimposing a different actor or anything else. Now, I say that with full acknowledgement that this is a person that is seems to be having problems, and it seems like people should be giving them support in ways to help them through these problems that they're having. I don't know that removing this actor from this role is the right move for Warner Brothers, for the other people, the cast, the crew, everybody behind the scenes, the investors in Warner Brothers. I don't know if that's the right move. And I don't know that they need to rush into judgment on that yet. This could very well be a person that's going through a difficult time in life, is able to seek help, is able to get some help. And the callous decision to punish this person because they're having a hard time by removing them from a film, which could impact the film and jeopardize the success of it in the livelihood of all the people that worked on it, feels like it could be premature. There's a legal process that goes through that will go through. There could be a situation where this individual seeks help, guidance, counseling to deal with whatever problems they're going through and comes out better on the other side of that. Now, that it does not mean I am absolving this individual of any violent behavior, any sort of targeted harassment. I think there's like a false imprisonment type charge that was in there too, or the situation a couple of years ago, violence in whatever Scandinavian country that was, with the woman that was involved there. However, I think patience and caution is appropriate. If there's a legal process that goes through, if this person doesn't get help for themselves, doesn't work to better themselves, if they do not feel comfortable employing this person in the future, make that decision in the future. There's a gap of time between now and when this film is going to come out. I've seen the social media sort of feeling around Ezra Miller saying that they should be fired and they should be recast. And I don't think that should be something that happens immediately. I think you let the situation play out, understand where things go. And to be quite honest, and this is totally callous on my part, not my part, I'm thinking about a very callous thing that comes out of this. We've seen again and again where celebrities have some sort of problems, be them legal or substance abuse issues or whatever else, go through a really hard phase. They go do the rehab, get some counseling, go back, do the, public apology tour on the late night thing. And I'm not saying that's fake or put upon. Maybe sometimes it is. I don't want to be that cynical. They go and do the thing. They sort of re-get the public's trust, or at least their intrigue on, oh, let's see how their comeback project is. And it gets more butts in seats. That might not be the right way to look at it. I think WB should be taking their time evaluating the full scope of the situation, letting things come to light before they rush into judgment because social media feels like it's swaying them in one direction or another. That's it.
I'm going to be the first to violently agree with Garrett. I haven't got the initial violent agreement on anything yet. So
nice. I also violently agree with Garrett.
I do too.
Now, I say all that. He is my least favorite. Sorry, they are my least favorite cast member of Justice League. I just never felt like it hit right. But where we are in the process with the appearances in the movies, and this thing's like, it's got a lot of post, but it's, it's filmed, like it's wrapped, this is going to be our Flash for a little bit,
Yeah. I agree, and it's like this is the first time Miller's had all these issues and all these situations come up, but this is the first time that they are in a position that they have to face the music on it, right? Like, you had the Iceland thing. No, like to this day, we don't know if it was staged, if it was what it was really, because the lady involved didn't say anything about it. There's no police report. There's nothing to substantiate what had occurred, right? And then you had like the weird video that he had posted threatening the Ku Klux Klan, I guess. Like, nobody here has a problem with that, but
no, go get him. But are you the guy for it?
I was like, hey, I support him.
I think it brings up a really interesting conversation around speech and violence, because a lot of times, look, I totally understand what people are saying when they say that speech is violence, but I think that we're confronting that reality, like what that reality looks like in the last couple of weeks in pop culture, right?
Sure.
Because there's rumors. The reason I say that there are rumors, and I don't want to like put too much into it, but there's rumors that the people that Ezra threatened made some transphobic remarks towards him. And that's basically what set him off. And they got upset. So look, I think whatever those people said, it doesn't justify Ezra breaking into their hotel room, saying, I'm going to bury you in your, whatever wife, and then stealing their like stuff. Chris Rock making a joke about Jada, a G.I. Jane joke about Jada doesn't justify him going up and slapping him across the face. So I think there's a really important discussion that we're having in pop culture about, speech and violence, and like speech, the way you respond to bad speech is speech, more speech, telling someone that they're wrong, telling somebody that that they are hateful, that they're disrespectful, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine how different it would have been if, let's take the Will Smith situation. Imagine how different it would have been if Chris Rock had made that joke, and then the next day Jada had said, Chris told a joke or whatever, but actually I just want to raise awareness. I have alopecia and it's a very painful thing. Like, the Smiths, there would have been so much more sympathy for the Smiths.
Oh man.
So I think that it's the same with Ezra. If they had, if they had said, look, I've encountered some transphobic rhetoric from people in everyday life, I think there would have been a lot more sympathy for them. But with doing what they did, they basically put themselves in a situation where it's like, it just does not, in theory, it sounds like it's okay, but it's not okay,
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like there's such a lack of grace and forgiveness for people now,
Mhm.
especially in this like social media lynch mob
Mhm.
society that we
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
That you know, Warner Brothers with both of these individuals, but Ezra in particular, if they show that they can take the time and put the effort into getting him whatever help that he needs so that he makes better decisions and doesn't put himself in these situations in the future,
Mhm.
I think that that would acquit both the studio and Miller really well. And if they can do that talking tour like you talked about, Garrett, and show that they've gone to substance abuse counseling
Yeah.
and gotten help with whatever anger management things or anything else that are at play, I think that that'll go a really long way. And then at that point in time, both Miller and his fan base can kind of push back at the naysayers and say, well, who are you to judge somebody going through a bad time?
Mhm.
And who are you to stop anybody from having grace for this individual and allowing them to grow from that experience and to continue on with their life and their career and everything else? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's disappointing that we do that all the time. And if there's a silver lining to these, hopefully that this is the first steps. And Will Smith, same thing, right? Like he wrote a book and has a show about struggles with mental illness. Like
Mhm.
you can draw a
Mhm.
pretty straight line.
And you bring up an excellent point with the social media piece, because that is truly what perpetuates it, right? Like we can comment, we as in the royal world, we get to comment on, or we have the ability to comment on every single thing whenever we want. And it's just going back to the Will Smith thing, because I do think these two things happening so close to each other are very related in a way. You can find a lot of correlation with them. Is like, the first and foremost, Ezra needs help. Absolutely. They need help because they cannot keep putting people in danger, whether
Mhm.
it's for their own personal reasons or whether it, like Josh said, it was a reaction to something. Regardless, the look, the optics is always going to be bad because the retaliation is always worse. It always gets viewed as being worse, right? But
Mhm.
it's the idea of social media that we can just have these conversations. And you're right, Carlos, there's such a lack of grace because there's no time for discussion. There's no time
Yeah.
for communication. It's everyone is just putting out their thoughts. And I think that does force studios to go, well, the world is speaking
Oh
about it.
man, there's so much
So
pressure.
we have to, and I am not a studio exec, as sometimes I wish I was, because I would put out some absolute bangers if I was. But sometimes I wish I'm glad I'm not a studio exec because I don't know the if I would be able to have those conversations and make those choices, because there is so much pressure. And like to Garrett's point, there's millions of dollars here. The movie's done. Like this is, it's unfortunate because I never like to give credit to like millionaires and billionaires. But at the same time, it's a business, right? And they have to keep it going. So it's not that simple, like Garrett said, like right now, just be like, well, let's recast them and let's,
Yeah.
or they and them. And you can't do that. You just can't have those conversations now because like there is so much time. And it's the problem is social media. It,
Mhm.
it,
Ne-
it really is, because you go back and look at some of your favorite celebrities' histories, you'll be surprised that some of your favorite ones who've actually been arrested actually did jail time. I'm looking at like a Sean Penn, who's a legend, but that guy spent 30 days in jail for abuse reasons. Like it's something that happens, and their lives are also put on such a bigger scale that we all
Ben
have access to now.
Ben Affleck groped Hillary Burton's boob
Yeah, dude, no one
Yeah,
talks about
yeah.
that.
No one
And
talks.
maybe
No one,
maybe
on
she doesn't
live
want people
TV.
to talk about it, but
no,
that
Yeah.
thing
no one
happened.
talks
Like
about it.
Hey man, A over E, Affleck over Ezra.
Affleck over there.
No disrespect. I always got to throw that on when these guys
oh,
are
I've
alive.
never heard that one before. That's like, man, if I wouldn't be too terrified to put that on a t-shirt and wear it around, that'd be a great t-shirt. Downey Jr. is just Ian in the chat. That's who my mind always goes to, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
went back, had a chance to work on himself, improve his life,
Mhm.
find some healing. And the dude's back to being a bigger movie star than he was before, right?
Than
Like,
everything.
Mhm.
take
Mhm.
some time, have some consideration. Don't be swayed by the mob on social media. I think, like, but saying we're going to take a pause before we greenlight another project with this person is a reasonable and responsible thing to do, because you still have to be able to insure these actors, and you have to make sure you're ensuring the safety of the other people around them. That's fine, but like, don't rush to anything too much. Now,
And
if things get obviously worse, Josh, I want to let you know I'm all in on Zac Efron Flash. I like that idea, man. That was cool with me.
Yeah, and I just wanted to put out there, I agree with what Garrett's saying. I don't think they should knee-jerk fire Ezra Miller, but if they did, I think Zac Efron would be a great Flash, and he's charming. He's the right age for it. Like, everybody's casting him as a Human Torch. He's too old for Human Torch. Zac Efron's 35 years old. He's too old for that role.
He's 35.
Like, yeah.
He can play 27.
Yeah, totally. But he's perfect age for Barry Allen. He's not cast in a superhero role. But I do want to touch on that, what you just said, like, just the overall, like, putting a bow on it. We need more grace and forgiveness, I think, in society. We're way too and like, even the whole, like, Jeff Johns debate, there was a hot take in here somebody shared in the comments that and this seems to be a recurring theme for some reason. Like, I'm actually not that passionate a Jeff Johns fan. Like, I like his work, but yeah, here you go. This is one hot take, but Jeff Johns should get another chance in the movie division. Well, he's in the movie division. He's just not as out front as he used to be. But like, there's a whole horde of fans who are trying to destroy his career based on the fact of, you know, stories from certain people. And look, if Jeff Johns did some stuff, like, he should apologize for it, right? But like, why are we trying to ruin someone's career or crucify someone based on, you know, on mistakes that they've made in the past, you know?
Part of his story regarding potential mistakes that may or may have not have happened. Like, I think that's the other thing, right?
Well, like, it's like, just, you know, unprofessional interactions. It's not like he's accused of doing anything criminal, as far as I know, right? So it's like, yeah.
Well, he leaked the script to Feige. That's how he got the idea for Civil War.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
That snake.
Snake hat emoji.
True, Nico.
Cat snake.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Josh, you know what I think would be fun? Like, I don't want to take over the show, but I know we do have to wrap it up. I think we should share the takes we didn't get to share, but no reaction.
Okay.
Ooh.
I want to hear Josh's hot take, though. This is
I didn't share hot take. I'll share my hot take. We don't have to spend too much time on it.
No, do it. I want to.
It is what it is. And then we can do a round robin of like all the collecting up the takes. Because me and my roommate want to watch Moon Knight tonight. So, and unlike
that's on my to-do list too.
Yeah.
And unlike y'all, I go to bed really early. So
Not me.
yeah. So
for another 5 hours.
yeah. All right. So here's my hot take, and I've been going back and forth on what I'm going to share, and I think I'm going to share this. As great as director-driven films as we've gotten, I think Warner Brothers is a little bit too dependent on directors for their filmmaking, and it's led to some disasters within franchises. That is my hot take.
I violently disagree with you.
Wait, Carlos, let's just do a quick around the wheel. Violently agree or disagree or something in the middle, because I think this is interesting.
I tepidly agree with you.
I tepidly agree as well. And let me say, not for like, hey, Clint Eastwood has a great idea for a movie that he wants to make, or Nolan has, Nolan's whatever, these sort of auteurs that are going to do original things. Yeah, director driven all day long. Do your thing. If they're proven they can make you some bucks, great. But on pre-existing IPs that like, man, a thing's a thing. We want you to make a movie about the thing, not your version of the thing. I'm on board with that.
There's got to be a sandbox, right? There's got to be like a play area that you assign them to, and you got to say, look, within the this is a beloved pre-existing IP. And they do this. Warner Brothers does this with the Harry Potter series. Like, they know how to do this. And it's because, you know, I know she's controversial these days, but J.K. Rowling is really involved with that series. But like, I think that, you know, you have the DC Comics people at your disposal to kind of help guide that discussion. And as Matt Reeves has proven, you can hire a director who loves the characters, and give them pretty much free reign, trusting that they're going to make a film that honors the character. But yeah, that's my hot take.
So why I violently, and I love you, Josh, so I don't actually violently disagree with you. I do think it's how you look at it, because I do think there's a point to be made for all of it, because you look at something like Reeves, it works. For Snyder, it didn't, right? Why I like it, and this might be the film buff in me, is it's like, I love, and like you said, there is a sandbox, but I like the idea of, okay, there's more quality storytelling in, okay, you have this vision, tell it. It may not work, but at least there's integrity there. Whereas I look at the MCU, where so many of those movies, you see Feige's touch, most of them feel the same, mostly they're forgettable. And it's like, do we want these ones at the end of the day? I want a good movie and a good story. That doesn't always translate when it's the whole overarching one producer ongoing thing, because then you get successful but forgettable movies. But for me, I look at like the Batman. I love what they did with Birds of Prey. It was like a comic book indie movie on steroids. It was so much fun. I love Joker. I love what they were allowed to do with Logan. You turn that thing R, you put Logan on the ends of his ropes in this very violent, depressing world. Is it still Wolverine? Yeah, but there was a lot of liberties that James Mangold was able to take there. So I appreciate that. Now, if the goal is to be successful, I agree with your take. Warner Brothers should stop doing that. If the goal is to make really good, memorable movies, I go with the directors. But there should be this whole,
there should be a balance, right? There should be a little bit of a balance,
but there should also be a, please let us know what you're doing.
Dude,
so that
that's where I was gonna go, man.
Let us know what you're doing.
There's some sort of middle ground where it's like, and I think, Josh, it still kind of lines up with your take, where it might not be that they're too reliant or too like tied down by being a director driven studio, is that there needs to be the right match between director, subject matter, producer vision with the studio, you know, that owns the company that owns what those characters, what they want to do with the characters, need to be aligned. Because if I went to, you know, let's just Zack Snyder and Matt Reeves, man, one day we're going to stop talking about Zack Snyder and he's going to love it so much. Not because I hate his stuff, but because as soon as I talk about Zack Snyder, some chucklehead gets to jump in my mentions and be like, rent free. And it's like, come on, man, get out of here. We're talking superhero movies. This guy's, you know, it's not rent free. It's fair game.
Yeah.
But you think about like, Warner Brothers had an idea what they want to do with Batman, right? We've heard now it's like Reeves didn't want a Batman that killed. Warner Brothers said they didn't want a Batman that killed. Go to your vision, but there's a sandbox you have to play in, so to speak, right? So you get the right marriage of what the producers in the studio wants with the right director that has an interesting take that fits within the grounds, but can maybe kind of push the envelope and be a little bit progressive. That's awesome. If all of a sudden you end up in the Zack Snyder side of that equation, where they're like, and it's a little bit different because you had Nolan as a very active producer, like very active producer. Like in a number of ways, Snyder was a director for hire on Man of Steel. But for BVS, Nolan steps back. He says, no, I don't want to do this. This isn't where I wanted to go. And I've got other stuff I want to do. All of a sudden, there's this lack of that actively involved producer and a director that's allowed to keep his chair, but has a vision that the studio ultimately isn't happy with. Like, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But, but, and this is where I'll stop talking because I'm starting to lose my voice. Excuse me. They, I think, you know, Nico, you mentioned Logan. And I think that's an interesting example because when Logan came out, we had 16 years of Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine at the time.
That is a good point.
And he might have been 6'3", but outside of 6'3", he played Wolverine, pretty on the money for what people would traditionally expect. Maybe a little bit softer than some of his, earlier and then like 90s when everybody got super badass, but like played Wolverine pretty straight. So then what you get to do after you firmly establish what the character is in the minds of the audience, and you've given them a big, huge, fat meal of stuff that they would expect from that character, and it's in line, it's still interesting. Then you can hit them with the zinger, and it's like, hey, and here's the curveball. We're going to do something totally different with this established thing that you already love.
Mhm.
I think the challenge is when you try to do that totally different, controversial, big, bold vision as like the first go. Imagine if they would have done the Logan approach to Wolverine in 2000 with X-Men, right? Like, I don't know that it would have played the same way.
No, it wouldn't
No.
have.
So
Mhm.
eventually, when you get that relationship trust and the equity in the audience, I think that's when you can do sort of this Elseworld story. I mean, shoot, man, if we had 15 years of Henry Cavill playing, more like the Byrne Jurgens era Superman, or even earlier, and then you hit me with here's an Elseworlds version where he lands in a super cynical, shitty world where people hate him and he's got to figure out if he wants to be a good guy or not. Dude, I could watch that maybe forever. But when you're not leading up to it and that's what you hit it with, I think that's where you get in problems.
Well said.
Totally. Another thing too, another example of a director that, and I personally like this film. I'm on the end of liking the film, but another example of a director probably having too much control is Wonder Woman 84, Patty Jenkins.
Sure.
The other most divisive film in the DCEU, ironically enough, the two most divisive films in the DCEU, I feel like, are Batman versus Superman and Wonder Woman 84. And they have like camps, right? But look, Patty Jenkins wanted to make an 80s style superhero movie. That was her vision for Wonder Woman 84. She basically wanted to make the Wonder Woman version of Superman 2. And that is exactly the movie that she made.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse. And I fall on the side of liking it, but I can definitely see the flaws in it. And so it's like, I think that, it would have helped if Patty would have given her, and apparently she was given notes by the studio, and she ultimately said, no, this is what I want to do. And the studio just said, okay. So I think the studio stepping in a little bit more, insisting on making some changes would be good. And, the truth is, even directors that get full creative control don't have full creative control. There were notes given back to Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves wanted to make the Batman even more subdued than it was. And the studio insisted on action scenes in it, as I recall. So, I think that there's room for that. But listen, I need to go. My roommate and I are going to watch Moon Knight. And but I do want to go around really quick. Go ahead, share the hot takes we didn't get to share, and we won't respond. And then go do your plug. So we'll start with Carlos.
You know what? And mine probably dovetails pretty good into this conversation. So all I'll say is that my hot take is that Warner Brothers in DC is actually in a creatively superior spot to Marvel Studios.
I love that hot take.
I
And where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Canadian Cape Crusader, the handle on the screen there, and on the Nerd Room podcast. Every week we drop a show Thursday. Might be a little light this week, but if we talk everything Star Wars, Marvel, DC, beyond, and probably the twist on our show that's a bit different than others is there's a lot of toy talk and whatnot, ranging from retro collectibles right up to stuff that we have to figure out how to pay for. So
Nice. Awesome. That's great. Nico, where can people find you?
Do you want me to give the takes or no?
Yeah, give your takes. Give your takes.
So for a variety of reasons, the first Avengers film is the best Avengers film of the four. And my hottest take for all my comic book fans out there, once again, for a variety of reasons I'll explain, is that Mr. Barry Allen should have remained deceased in the comics, and Wally should have never been removed from primary Flash status. If you brought Barry back, I think you could have done a lot with him, but it was not to make him Flash front and center again. But I love these guys, and I love my own takes. You could follow me everywhere at Nico Crusoe to see more of those. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok. I do film reviews there as well. Come talk to me. I'll respond both publicly and in the DMs. And looking forward to expand more and more and talk to more people. So that's all I got. Yeet.
All right, Garrett, take us home.
All right. They aren't fully fleshed out. But I have thought of a couple that I wasn't going to bring to the show. One, if anybody that's watching has been in the Batman on Film Facebook group, you may have heard me talk about this before. I can argue for hours on why Batman and Robin is a better Batman movie than Batman Returns. So there that is.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. And then my other one is we need more superhero content because it is in movies and live action movies, because it is an in-demand genre. We do not need as many adaptation of existing properties. Superhero movies are ripe for new ideas, new concepts, new characters that will allow more people to enjoy them because they are not constantly nitpicking what the movie is doing to their favorite character and if it got it quote unquote right or not. You guys probably know this about me. I'm a big talker. I love interacting. I love communicating with people. I'd like to do more of that. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @GarrettWato. I should have put it on the thing there. That was silly of me. It's @GarrET, just as it's spelled there. Garrett Wato, WATO. You can also listen to me on the Batman on Film podcast, or subscribe to the Batman on Film podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You'll get, the sort of main podcast shows every 2 weeks or so. You also get some content from our editor-in-chief, Bill Jet Ramey, on the social hours. And every once in a while, everybody's favorite Rick Shu drops in a satellite episode about some sort of nonsense that's not Batman related at all. Like Lauer and Haas will do a Toy Story show. So there's a lot of fun to be had over there. Check us out. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, great guys. Batman on Film is where I became a fan of stuff. So I've got a really soft spot in my heart for you guys. My hot take is that Marvel Studios should use the multiverse to potentially introduce new versions of characters that have been retired with twists on them. So kind of in inverse of Garrett's take there. I just think that it's really smart. And these characters are enduring and really popular, even if they're not starring in things. Bringing them in and having them be a part of team up films and stuff like that would be really cool. And having them interact with the characters that knew the original versions of the character would be fun too, I think. And very comic booky and nerdy. And I think the audience is ready for it. So thank you, Spider-Man No Way Home, for popularizing the multiverse idea. Yeah, you can follow me at Super Secret Josh. Obviously, you're watching my show, so you probably know that. Also, if you're watching right now, please subscribe to my show. When new episodes drop, you can they'll come right into your YouTube feed. So that's all the time we have today. Thank you guys so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate you all taking the time. It was the most cordial of hot takes conversations, I think.
A lot of them were good takes that we
were.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Where it's like the hot take drops, and it's like, oh shoot, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Maybe
Garrett's saying something. I can't hear you, Garrett.
Sorry, I had hit my mute button while I was taking a drink of water. I was going to say there's a couple of those takes where I was like, well, man, if you weren't going to say that, I was going to say that one. That was pretty good. I think the closest to a real disagreement is me and Nico being on total sides of the Superman movie coin. But that was still a fun conversation.
Very good conversation.
Brother. It was lots of fun. All right, guys, we'll head out. Have a good one.